Welcome back, viewers at home. Tonight, we welcome back Ms. Duduzile Mahlangu-Masango, a dedicated member of the Anti-Apartheid Movement and a passionate advocate for justice. Now, for her, she'll be joining us to follow up on the establishment of the Anti-Apartheid Movement for Palestine South Africa Chapter. Ms. Mahlangu-Masango helped spearhead a series of powerful protests and demonstrations in solidarity with the Palestinian people. She joins me now. Good evening, Ms. Masango. Jazakallah so much for joining us.
Good evening, and thank you for having me, and good evening to your viewers as well.
Now, Duduzile, as you are now able to reflect on the recent events and protests organized by the Anti-Apartheid Movement for Palestine South Africa Chapter, could you please share with us any notable outcomes or developments that, arose as a result of this action?
Thank you. Yeah, we must note that it is small things that we are still building up as a movement that will, at the end of the day, we believe will make a change and bring freedom to Palestinians. For example, we know that the ICJ order obliges us to stop selling coal to Israel. So one of the things that came up out of that in South Africa, we have now sent an open letter to the Minister of Trade, Minister Dau. We are calling for a trade embargo. South Africa is trading with Israel on coal. It's sending our South African coal to Israel. And as a movement, we believe that what our government is doing, it's encouraging the genocide that is taking place. So we need to stop that, especially because South Africa is the one that approached ICJ. So we need to lead by example. We need to take action on our words. So we are calling on a trade embargo with Minister Dau. We're not yet having a full positive, but we are working on that, and we are hopeful that our government will listen to us, and this will happen, and it will take change soon.
Thank you so much, Duduzile, for touching on that because, as much as we're celebrating the fact that, South Africa took the ICJ took Israel to ICJ, and considering that the ANC was the, leading and governing party, I think it's very important that our government really cleans house first, in-house, before we start, chanting and celebrating certain things when we ourselves are sort of in cahoots with such individuals like that of Israel. Now, Duduzile, can you tell us about the response that the Anti-Apartheid Movement for Palestine South Africa Chapter has received from the international community, considering the little, and I feel like you regard it as little work, but I think all of us can say it is not.
Yes, true. It definitely is not, but because it's going to take forever. These things don't. This thing has been over 75 years. Palestine is under the occupation of Israel, so we cannot really say just by a click of a thumb things will change. But definitely some things are taking place, are happening. After the 29th, with all the protests that were taking place, not only in South Africa but worldwide, one big thing, or one of the big things that we kind of celebrate is that in Norway, the Norwegians have decided to completely divest from the Israeli communications company Bezek that is serving communities of Judea and Samaria. And this is a big one because Norway is known to be the best in communications with Israel. So they have divested all their services from Bezek. So from Tuesday, this happened on the 4th of December. On Tuesday, it announced that it's no longer servicing the services, the communities of Judea and Samaria. And this is a great thing because the pension funds, these are pension funds that were coming from Norway, So it's also considering, they are also considering selling their shares in the Israeli companies active in the disputed territories and assisting in Jerusalem's war against Hamas in Gaza. So Norway is pushing, with Norway known to be one of the greatest. We believe that other countries will follow suit. Puma as well has decided to stop sponsoring the Israeli Football Association, IFA. So the IFA includes teams that are in the illegal Israeli settlements, and these are on Palestinian land, of course, and it advocates to maintain them. So Puma will no longer be servicing the football association, Israeli Football Association. So these are little things that we are grateful for, because as they pile up, it builds up to a bigger thing. And this will show Israel that the world is listening. The movement has come in to make sure that even the easiest of people kind of listens. When we are talking about football, you find a very common person sitting and watching football, and when they get news that Puma is no longer supporting, and then people start asking questions, but why? Why are they no longer supporting Israel? And then we get to teach people on what is happening on Palestine because of Israel, or what is happening on Gaza because of Israel. So we value such changes.
Now, just to ask a question of interest, Duduzile, coming back to, something that you highlighted in terms of, Puma suddenly not, funding and sponsoring, anything affiliated with Israel. I want to know from you, and I'm just hoping maybe you are able to give us an enlightening on this, is that what really takes such big companies such a long time in siding with humanity? Because there's so many images that are out there, protests, conversations that have been had around what's happening in Palestine, and have really digged deep into understanding real, or maybe they found even ways of explaining what exactly is happening in Palestine in layman terms. What exactly makes such big companies like this take so much, or such a long time, to come to a decision where they fully say, you know what, we are no longer partnering ourselves with such and such?
Here we are dealing with two difficult things that work in parallel, but at the same time, as they go in parallel, at some point they kind of coincide or make an accident. What businesses, this for them, it's money making. They need to put bread on their table and all of that. But at the same time, us as activists and people of nature, we are talking about humanity, which makes it very difficult for one to compare humanity to economy or money. We have found people lately tend to fall more onto the side of building up economically than thinking of what we call in our culture Ubuntu. We think people think less of humanity, but more of what they are gaining. So I believe this is my own take, and from what I've seen with working with on this, it's difficult for companies because, as you can understand, when you start up a company, you start it up to have a legacy, to have a build up for your family, and and then suddenly comes a person like me who comes and tells you you need to divest from this because it's killing the nation, and one takes is taken a little bit aback to think, but I've worked so much to get to the point of where I am economically, and now I have to. But slowly but surely, when one thinks back and looks, especially at what is happening currently now in Gaza, especially with unborn children, young children, having been bombarded like that, women who are pregnant, having to give birth without any resources of support, one tends to think back and it touches on your humanity. So slowly but surely, I think that's why we're now starting to see managers and CEOs starting to rethink on their economical issues and going back into their humanity.
I know you have actually responded to my next question that I'm just gonna throw to you, because I just would like for you to just elaborate more on, you know, the positive developments, if you've seen any, in attitudes towards Palestine as a result of the demonstrations and protests.
Yes, it's there. It cannot. We cannot really see it quite in the open. You know, the thing of Palestine, of Palestinian, of supporting the Palestinian cause. It's a very difficult one, especially coming from someone like me who is a Christian. There is a lot that touches back onto the Bible with our people, the civil society, reading the Bible and having this notion that Israel is the chosen country or the chosen nation, rather. It is the chosen nation. We have to respect what God has said about it and all of that. So it makes it a little bit difficult for it to be so much in the open. Now we are pushing it, and still we have questions. We are being questioned: why Israel? Why Palestine? But people are starting to understand. It's a way, for me, it's a way of how you read and interpret the scripture. So people are starting to interpret the scripture into humanity than into what is being just said or given to you by some pastor or some reverend whom we used to just listen without assessing. Now people are starting to assess. So people are starting to understand what is happening on the ground, especially because of the killings. There's so much killings that have been happening in Gaza, have made people to start looking deeper into this, into why is this happening? How could people of God be killed like that? And God keeps quiet. And how do we say we support the people of Israel, who are the chosen nation, when the killings are happening right there? So people are starting to question themselves. And that gives us a platform to then come in and teach and raise awareness and advocate in terms of what is really happening. Because at times the media only shows you just the snippets of what is happening without the background understanding. So activists and churches, we are also asking on churches to come in now and really teach people on, specifically on humanity. Why do we do this? It's more about humane. It's more about international law. It's more about international rights. International human rights. It's more about human rights for everybody. It doesn't have to be a certain categorized person, whether Israel, Palestine, South African, Norwegian, or Swedish. It's more about just being a human being.
You know, Duduzile, when it comes to, you know, supporting the likes of demonstrations and protests, I strongly believe, and I stand to be corrected by yourself, is that most people who join the demonstrations are people who understand and are siding with that demonstration that's currently taking place. It's quite unfortunate for individuals who are still confused because of what the, you know, your media says about the what's happening in Palestine, and you find that the conversations that are quite unregulated, in the sense where people are just sharing opinions, which starts to sound like facts, that speaks against what's happening or what's happening against the people of Palestine. How do we then go about restructuring these conversations that speak truth to what's currently happening in Palestine? And I think this also comes in terms of how do we spread awareness? How do we encourage proper factual conversation around the Palestinian issue?
Thank you very much for this. I think I've touched base on this, especially on the part of churches. we are giving out a call as a movement that the reverends, the pastors, whichever way they are called, but the men of cloth now in their pews, in their church pews, they need to start talking about the issue of Palestine and Israel, not only according to what the scripture is saying, but according to what currently is happening. The same thing we are calling out to the mosque as well, that imams start teaching exactly about what the current situation is doing to a person on the ground. The same thing, even in the synagogues, we are asking that the rabbis do the same thing. Everybody, because I'm mentioning these places because this is where we found the most of our people, of our civil society at. Yes, especially the ones who think more about Israel as a chosen nation, who think more about Israel as the selected nation or people. This is where these are the places where you find these people that you could talk to about the reality now that is happening on the ground. So hence our call to these particular places of faith, because remember, our people tend to listen more to the men of cloth and women of cloth because they believe these are chosen by God to save or to save the word or to share the word with them that comes from Him. So these are the places that will teach better than the media, because media obviously you're making business. It's more about just showing the snippets, but the details of this needs to come back to these places and not leaving out the schools, because the generation that we are growing it into these particular scenarios now. And they need to, as they grow, they need to learn and understand what they are growing into. When we're speaking about international humanity or international human rights, this is taught at schools, but at a certain level. Now we need to push it even deeper, not only about Israel and Palestine, even about USA. Now we have Trump who has been selected back into presidency, knowing that he supports what kind of mentality he has and brings of racism. The young ones need to learn early so that as they grow with this better understanding than what we never had before.
Without sounding like I'm repeating my questions to you tonight, would you say, Duduzile, there is a specific call to action that you would like to make to our viewers to get involved and show their solidarity with the Palestinian people?
As a South African especially, and to South Africans, we are at the space that we are in now. We are at the freedom that we are in now because of the world or the globe that supported us back then, pre-1994, when the movement, a similar movement that we are starting now for Palestine, there was the same movement towards the South African apartheid regime. And people stood up and stood side by side with us and supported us fully. There is no better thing than to do that. People need to understand that our freedom is not only for us, but for neighboring countries as well. So if we believe that we are free and it's enough for us that we are free, I don't think that's a complete statement, and I don't think that's fair we are fair to ourselves, because then at the end of the day we have to go and visit this holy place. And as a South African, you may find yourself that you are being barred from entering Israel because you support Palestine. So it is important that the people go out in numbers and show their humanity and support the struggle of Palestine, support the anti-apartheid movement, and learn a lot about what is happening. But most importantly, there is nothing better than boycotting, divesting, and sanctioning Israel. We already we have started as a movement to compile a list of businesses that are supporting Israel, and we will soon share in the public those businesses that we call out to people to stop supporting such businesses. We are now starting to boycott and divesting, and soon we will be talking about sanctioning Israel. So for now, the most important thing, be cautious of what you eat, where it comes from. Possibly it will be written that it comes from Israel, but the truth is that it comes from the Palestinian land, and there is a person or a number of them in Palestine and in Gaza who are still under rubble and who are supporting the company that is supporting the genocide in Gaza.
Duduzile, thank you so much for joining us tonight. Is there anything you'd like to close off with? Duduzile, still with us?
The best thing that I could say that the best thing that I could say right now is that until Palestine is free, we will never stop going out into the streets, into all government places, and asking them to make sure that they do right by Palestinian people. Gaza people need us. If they still have people under the rubble that they have not come out as yet, people are still crying about their families. Until everybody have seen the bone of their loved ones, we will not rest as Africa, as anti-apartheid movement in South Africa.
Thank you so much, Duduzile, for joining us this evening and just, sharing insight on the beautiful work being done by the movement and, incredible insight and just helping us understanding what is currently taking place in Palestine. Viewers at home, that was my conversation with Duduzile Mahlangu-Masango, sharing in her insight in terms of what's currently taking place and how you can take up space and ensuring that you're using your voice in the right way.